Hey guys, my name's Emily and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is going to be my first real video. My other videos were just playing around, kind of getting, some editing ideas or learning how to do thumbnails and things like that. But the dynamic I really want to go with this channel is all kinds of different things, from, real life topics, having fun, to informing people on, certain things I go through and I know other people go through, because I know that no one can really identify with something unless they've really, really gone through it themselves. So if there's anyone out there who has dealt with some of the things I've dealt with and I can help you in any way, that's what this is about. I don't care if 3 people or 4 people see this. As long as one of those people gets something out of it, I'm cool with it. So today, it's going to be like one of many different videos in kind of chronological order, and it's informative on the subject of Crohn's disease. I have had Crohn's disease since I was 15 years old. That's when I was diagnosed. I think I've had it a little bit, a little bit before that, but I was actually diagnosed at 15. And then from there on, I am now 24. I just turned 24. And throughout those years, it has gotten progressively worse. And that is kind of where I'm going to come in and talk about it, because, when I was going through this, I didn't really think to get on YouTube, or I didn't really see many when I actually did get on YouTube that, the person had gone through the severity of Crohn's disease that I have. And I'm not telling anybody that, one's worse than the other or this, that, and the other, but, I had so many questions and I just needed advice, or I needed to see somebody talking about it and be like, oh yeah, I went through that. So like I said, if this can be it for somebody, which I hope to God that it is. So I'm going to kind of start from beginning to now, and then, separate little videos be talking about different subjects, because fast forward to now, I do have a colostomy bag. I have, been post-op about 6 months. And I kind of want to make a whole video on that itself, because it's such a life change. Not always for the negative either, but it was definitely hard to adjust to something like that. I'm not even gonna lie. So 15 is around where I started having a lot of stomach pain, a lot of it was just agonizing. I couldn't sleep. I was going to the bathroom 15, 20 times a day. I was losing blood. I was missing school. we just couldn't figure out what was going on with me. So right before I turned 16, it was a little bit before Christmas, because my birthday is New Year's Eve. I finally was like, I've got to go to the ER. I've got to figure out what's wrong with me. I've got to, something's got to give. I went to the children's hospital locally, and they basically ran a bunch of tests on me. And, you go through a series of tests, because Crohn's disease can be kind of hard to diagnose. That's specific. I went through MRIs, I went through CAT scans, I went through blood work, I went through a colonoscopy. And if you don't know what a colonoscopy is basically where they run a stick with a camera attached to it, and they run it through your colon to see the inside and see what's going on, because Crohn's disease causes scarring and strictures and really bad ulcerations, and that's where the pain comes from. So, moving right along, I had a colonoscopy, and that really kind of confirmed it right there. They came to me, gave me a pamphlet on all of this stuff, and being 15, almost 16, I didn't really still know what it was. Not many people had it or talked about it openly back years ago, because now it's so prevalent. Everyone's got stomach issues, and I think it has a lot to do with the food we eat, but that's a whole nother day. But let's see. I was diagnosed, and then I started on a drug called prednisone. Prednisone is an anti-inflammatory steroid, that has a world of side effects, but, medicine affects people differently. And like I said, this is just kind of giving a backstory to how I, ended up where I am now. I had a lot of inflammation. He told me that I had one of the worst cases that he had seen. And, I just kind of rolled with it. I still didn't understand. And then I started to do more research. And it scared me. I'm not gonna lie, it freaked me out. The possibility of surgery, the medicines, and I've always been that person that is so high anxiety. I have dealt with anxiety disorder all of my life, and this just added to it. I was so terrified, and I started the first real Crohn's disease drug I was on from 16 to about 17. I was actually in the middle of a move during all of this, but I started on a drug called 6-MP, 6-merceptipurine, something like that. I'm butchering names, but oh well, you get the point. It is a chemotherapy drug. It is used to treat a range of different things like, leukemia, but the main target in this is to shut your immune system down and suppress it, because it is an autoimmune disease, which means, your immune system attacks your colon, and it's just, that's where it all stems from. So, I started on it, and it took about a good 3 months to really start to feel it, but that's the thing with Crohn's drugs. You have all of these side effects. Again, not everybody has side effects to every drug. Not everybody has those issues. Not everybody experiences those things. But this is just my personal experience. It was probably one of the worst drugs I've ever been on. I did lose hair. It ran my blood counts really low, and it messed with my liver enzymes, and I just, the Crohn's kind of subsided, and I went into what was kind of remission, but the side effects were just too bad. So around that time, I told my doctor that I wanted to stop it, and my Crohn's had started coming back. It was so aggressive, and each time it would come back more and more and more and more aggressive. So I started on a new drug called Remicade, and a lot of people who have Crohn's have been through kind of this similar journey. Remicade's usually the big go-to. It is a TNF blocker, which I believe is tumor necrosis factor. I don't know the ins and outs of that. All I know is it's also an immune suppressant, and it blocks a certain type of something. Don't shoot me. So it is administered by an IV. You go in, I believe you start out it's every 8 weeks and then 6 weeks, depending on how severe your Crohn's is. And this drug is kind of risky because it comes with a lot of warnings. It's got that big black box warning, and oh Lord, it's just, you go read the side effects. It's good to be informed, but at the end of the day, when you sit and you read all these side effects, you're like, oh my God, it psychs you out, it freaks you out. And I'd already been through so much with, all of this, but at the time you're just like, I'm just ready for some relief. I want to feel better. So I went in for my first infusion, and nothing really happened. I definitely left feeling really, really, really tired. Had a slight headache, but nothing too major. I woke up the next day and I was like, okay, I still feel sluggish, but I'm starting to feel better. So I went at the interval of every 8 weeks, and for about 2 years, my Crohn's kind of disappeared. I didn't really have too many side effects. I did get sick quite frequently, but of course with suppressing your immune system, that's gonna come with it. So, fast forward, and I was probably the beginning of 18. I started having really, 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 really bad stomach pains yet again. So they switched me from every 8 weeks to every 6 weeks to try to get the medicine to work. And I just started feeling terrible. Every time after my infusion, I would have a really tight chest. I don't know. I thought maybe I just brushed it off as anxiety. It's just anxiety. And then finally I went in for another infusion, and I just felt like I couldn't breathe. And the thing with these drugs is you develop antibodies so quickly that your body can start to reject them. But I was having really bad stomach pains. I was going to the bathroom 20, 30 times a day. I was still on Remicade. I was still on prednisone at this time. And I tried everything. And so, you know, my gastroenterologist at the time was like, you know, we need to go back in and look and see what's going on inside. So I went in for another colonoscopy, and it came out, and that was when the first S word was dropped. And I'm talking about surgery, which absolutely was like the end of everything at that time, because I just was so terrified. But the inside of my colon was so scarred and so, I mean, it was so blocked off almost that it was a little portion of my large intestine that needed to be removed. I scheduled it for about 3 weeks out because they were scared that it was going to turn into a, you know, a total blockage, and they didn't want to, you know, they wanted to avoid that at all costs. So I looked online for everything, trying to, you know, prepare. The surgery I had was a colon resection. It's where they take out a part of the diseased colon and then they connect the rest back together. My first surgery was laparoscopic. I was also in a children's hospital at the time, because legally you're not an adult till this age in Alabama, whatever, yada, yada, yada. And during that time, because it was such an infection risk, they took me off Remicade for a good month before this actual surgery had happened. So anyways, I recovered pretty well from the surgery. I do remember one of the worst parts was waking up with a nasogastric tube, which is, I guess afterwards they paralyze your insides so it can heal, so you don't go to the bathroom right after surgery. They let, you know, things heal, and usually when you start to, you know, use the restroom again and the paralysis in the colon kind of subsides, you know, that's when you can get up and start to eat and walk. And I bounced back really, really quickly. I wasn't in too much of pain. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Just the initial waking up, I had a tube going from my nose down into my throat. Yeah, that was the worst part. And I stayed in the hospital about a week and a half. I really started to bounce back really, really, really quickly. And it was laparoscopic, so they didn't just cut me all the way open. And then about a week later, after surgery, they're like, you know, we want to get you back on Remicade. We want to get you in. And keep in mind, I did say that I thought that my body was starting to build up a resistance to the drug. So I went in for this infusion, and right away, I started having really bad chest pains. And I was like, okay, Emily, this is just anxiety. Calm down. Don't worry about it. You know, it's just anxiety. But it wasn't, because as soon as the medicine hit my vein, I had what's called an anaphylactic reaction. My body rejected the medicine to the point where I stopped breathing. Now, that probably was one of my biggest anxiety triggers. And still to this day, I have such a fear of medicine, because not being able to breathe, you know, that breathing is essential, obviously, and not being able to breathe scared me so much that I was terrified. I came out of that experience, you know, they pumped me full of Benadryl, they cut the infusion off really quickly. And I know a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people with Crohn's who actually have had that similar type of reaction. So anyways, I started talking about a drug right away, because they didn't want, you know, the disease to start attacking the, you know, the part of the colon that had just become healthy, you know, linked back together. They knew that my progression of the disease was so bad that they had to jump on it super quick. So I started what is Humira. These are self-injections. Literally, it sounds terrible giving yourself a shot, but it really wasn't that bad. Aside from the shot being kind of painful, it wasn't as hard as I had imagined it would be. So I did my first 4 injections at the actual infusion office, switched to an adult GI, and they kind of showed me how to do everything. And I'm going to go ahead and say that Humira had to be the best medicine that I've ever tried. I thought that, you know, the thought of having Shots, you know, I did it every week. I did a shot every week because like I said, my disease was just so bad. You know, some people are once every 2 weeks. It just really kind of depends. I think it's like 40 milligrams and 80 milligrams. I was on 40 every week, and some people are on 80 every 2, but it still kind of evens out. And I wasn't on anything else at the time. Now, that was kind of in my time where I was like 18, 19, and I was actually feeling pretty good at the time. I gained my weight back, I finished school, I got a job, and I was really starting to feel myself again. I had a lot of life stuff happen, which one thing I will say, stress is definitely not good for Crohn's disease. You don't want to be in such a stressful situation, and you know, life is stressful. You know, we're surrounded by stress. So I mean, you can't really help that, you can't stop that. It is what it is. But I was going through some things at the time, and I just got to this point where I kind of went through a little bit of a depressive phase. I kind of just stopped taking my meds, which is such a big no-no, because I think a lot of what I've been through has to do with that. Now, I will say in my defense, leading up to when I stopped taking my medicine, it was already, you know, kind of slowly not working at this point. And I think I just got so tired of it one day. You know, I can't describe what it is. I know people who've been through this can identify with the fact that sometimes you just want to be normal. Sometimes you just get tired of doctor's appointments, sticking yourself. And yes, things could be way worse. They could, but I mean, everyone's battle is their battle, and how they feel is how they feel. You know, you can't really discredit that. So it just slowly stopped working, and I was like, I'm in pain all the time. I just don't care anymore. So I decided to just stop. I stopped taking it. And about a week after I started taking it, my pain had gotten progressively worse. And I think this is something that had been there quite a little bit. And I think that's why the medicine was stopping working, because I was already getting a lot worse. The medicine hadn't been working for a while, and it just took a minute to kind of realize, you know, for things to get that bad to actually feel the effects. So I remember I went through about a month or two where I was crying every night. I was in so much pain. It was pelvic area, and I was like, God, you know, every doctor was like, you have kidney stones, you have this wrong, you have that wrong, and they did all kinds of scans, and I was like, you know, it burns when I pee. I thought it was a UTI. I didn't know what it was at this point, and I started passing what I thought was kidney stones. I was like, okay, but the pain was one of the worst pains I'd ever felt in my entire life. I was going to the bathroom, you know, with Crohn's so much, and I didn't think this was even a Crohn's issue. I almost thought it was like a gynecological issue, just because that was the pain in this area, which I will say your colon is in your back area. It wraps your guts go all around. I mean, really, they do. So it can cause just so much pain. I just felt like I was defeated. I was screaming every night, and poor everybody that was around me, because nobody knew how to help me. I was in tremendous amounts of pain. I mean, I was in so much pain. And finally, it took a urologist to take a sample of my urine, and they determined that it actually had feces, which meant I had a fistula. Now, if you don't know what a fistula is, it's actually a tract from your colon to either the outside part of your body, but this one connected to my bladder, which is actually really dangerous because you can run into things like infection, and one of the major infections is sepsis, which is a very life-threatening 911, very fast killing infection. So I met with a surgeon, and they said, look, the only thing that we can do is another colon resection, which absolutely terrified me, because this was going to be a little bit more in-depth. It was going to, it terrified me. But the doctor that I had met with, I wasn't too fond of. I live in Mobile, Alabama, and look, no shade to anyone, but I didn't feel comfortable with any of these doctors. Coming from Dallas, Texas, they had a little more hands-on, better bedside manner, better doctors, and I just wasn't pleased with this doctor. The feeling I got when I entered that room, it was just not like, hey, I want you to operate on me. And I think that's such a big thing. You've got to have a good relationship with any of your doctors. I mean, they're going to be putting their hands in your stomach and doing whatever they're doing. So, I mean, you do have to have a good relationship with them. So I decided to look a little elsewhere. I am about 2 hours from New Orleans. Ochsner's Hospital is probably one of the biggest hospitals in New Orleans, if not the biggest. And I had been recommended by a friend to go and, see this surgeon. His name is Dr. Furman. He was amazing. I met with him and decided to go ahead and admit myself into the ER and kind of go through that way. And we talked about the surgery. We talked about everything. And this surgery was a little more intense. They decided to keep me there and go through the motions, and then we talked about a surgical plan. He did his own form of testing and decided where he's going to cut, and this time it was my small intestine. It was about 1 foot from my small intestine because the track from my small intestine was connecting to the bladder, and they just knew that they had to do this as fast and as quick as they possibly could. So they did. They did the surgery. They open cut me, and I had a huge scar from here about to maybe above my puke area. So I was in a lot of pain after that. It was one of those that just kind of sucked me down. It was a lot. And I just kind of felt really defeated at that point. I was only 20. I don't think I was 21 yet, but I was going through so much at the time, and this was just something to add on top of it. Plus, it's also scary. So, but moving right along, I had that surgery. I went home, I recovered, went back to work, continued on with life, and Crohn's just seemed to always find its way back. Not even 6 months after that surgery, or just 6 months, I started having another issue. This time it was a fistula on the outside of my body. Where my surgical site had closed up is where I started leaking feces yet again, which I guess the small intestine was on the outside and it was coming through. So therefore I had to go back to New Orleans, and I was very pleased with him as a surgeon. So of course I used him again, and he's like, I'm sorry, we have to do another colonoscopy, excuse me. We have to do another resection. And at that time, the idea of a temporary colostomy bag was kind of thrown around. It was just me by myself in New Orleans having to make that decision, and that's kind of a big decision. I was so stubborn. They were like, this might be the best thing to let your colon rest. It's where they clamp off part of your colon and pull it on the outside of your body. The ileostomies are over here, and the colostomy, why can't I say colostomy? Are over here. So I just wasn't ready. I was like, do whatever you have to do so I don't have to go through that. And he's like, okay, well, this surgery is going to be a little bit worse because I'm taking out more. And of course, it's on the outside of your body. So, I mean, it was just, this surgery was so intense. It took me a good 2.5, 3 weeks to even get to just walk out of that hospital because I was just so, my body had just gone through a surgery, let alone this was another surgery, not even a year later. And it took me a long time to really recover. That recovery was probably one of my worst recoveries that I'd ever been through because I felt so defeated. I was going through a lot of depression at the time, and I didn't feel like, I was like, this is how my life's always going to be. And, I was 21 at the time of this surgery, and I was just like, I can't hold down my job. I can't have a normal life. And it was hard to live on my own because I needed somebody to be there, and God bless my mother, who always took me in when I needed her to. After surgery, surgery after surgery after surgery, it was just becoming chronic at this point. We just couldn't get my inflammation under control. So I finally got on some meds that started to help. And I actually started to, put my weight back on. I never felt 100% though after this surgery. And I felt terrible. But for a good little bit, I actually was doing okay. I had this surgery 21 going into 22, and from 22 to 23, I was actually pretty good. And then I was working a lot. I was going through a lot. Again, I had been through so much, and I decided, I just was gonna work my butt off, throw myself into working, and I think I just exhausted myself to the point where I started having a lot of pain, and this pain was affecting my job. It was becoming so chronic, and it was a different kind of pain than I'd ever felt before. I was losing more weight again, and I had a lot of issues going to the bathroom. Now, usually, that's not a problem when I'm flared up. I will go 20, 30 times a day, and I can't stop. But this in particular was a little bit different, and that particular cause is something that I'll get into, totally different subject, but I got off on the wrong path and caused a blockage in my colon. And I found that out by having another scan and going back to New Orleans. At this point, he had told me that he really was thinking about the colostomy, and at that point I was in so much pain I didn't care anymore. I was just tired of dealing with this. I thought that it was just going to make everything better at this point. Well, this particular go around, I was so sick. I was about 79 pounds, which is so low, and I was knocking on death's door. I felt horrible. So what they did was they took me in, and they decided not to do surgery right away because it was just too risky with my weight and, no nutritional value. So they put me on IV nutrition, basically. And they did I still have a scar somewhere from it. Yeah, right there. I don't know if you could see it. Yep. They did a PICC line, which is, I have terrible veins. I'm gonna go ahead and tell that right now. I have shitty veins. So they decided to put a PICC line in because they knew I was going to be there for a while getting IV meds, IV food, everything. So I was on the IV food for about a week and a half, and then they formed a plan. Basically, they put me under, they looked at my colon and were like, okay, we're going to go in from here, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he told me, hey, you don't have to have a bag. It's all going to be okay. So I thought, okay, cool. I didn't think that the bag was going to be a thing. I kind of had accepted it in my head. Not that I was okay with it, but I had accepted it. And then he told me, no, this isn't going to happen. So the morning of my surgery, I, got prepared and everything. And I woke up in an extreme amount of pain. I don't know if I've ever experienced pain like that, because I've been through a lot of pain, and that was just like ungodly. But my colon, I think, was stretched too much. I don't think that was the right decision, but again, another story, different time. And I really, really had a hard time. 2 days after surgery, I started to throw up. I started having a lot of issues. And I had, my heart was racing, tachycardia, I think is the name that the term they kept using. They kept monitoring my heart, and I kept throwing up. My room was 60 degrees, and I was still sweating. I kept telling them, I'm like, I'm dying. Something's seriously wrong with me. That something is not right. And it took them a little while, but maybe 5 to 6 days later, they had come in and were like, you have to go for emergency surgery, because I had sepsis. My colon had become detached at the site that it was put back together. I don't know why I had that feeling that something was just not right this time. And of course, you always know your instincts. So I went in for yet a second surgery. And at that point, I'm a little fuzzy on how this whole timeline worked. But I ended up, they left me open, I believe. I think they were trying to decide until my surgeon got there, whatnot, whatever. I ended up in the ICU for 2 days, I believe, 3 days on a vent. I think they were just trying to let my body rest and all that good jazz. Like I said, I was so heavily medicated, I remember none of it. It's little bits and pieces that my brain tries to make out. Still to this day, I still have like, oh, okay, that happened. And let's see. it's just, I try to make sense of it all. But after that happened, then I went in for yet a third surgery, and they decided to do a temporary colostomy bag. I remember waking up in the ICU yet again, and I really couldn't talk. I didn't know what was going on. I remember feeling my stomach, and I was like, okay, they did it. You know, once you mentally prepare for it, and then you get the news like, hey, you're not going to have this happen to you, and then ultimately you end up in that situation, I don't think I gave myself enough time to mentally prepare. And I mean, honestly, it's such a big life change. Like, who can mentally prepare for that? And keep in mind, this was just 6 months ago. I was still 23 at the time. I literally just turned 24 not too long ago. And I went through a big bout of depression. I was in the hospital over a month, and it was really draining. My life had changed. I can't lie and say that it didn't change my body image. It is something that, I mean, it's on the side of you. It's, I had a lot of coming to terms. I literally I wanted to crawl in a hole and die at that point. I didn't really have anyone to talk about it with because nobody else in my family or my friends have Crohn's. And I would go online, but this person didn't have my experience, and that person, and for the person out there that does have this, and it just needs somebody to talk to or needs a point of reference, I'm going to make, several more videos, and from here on out, it's going to be more of colostomy type videos and other videos, but my main serious ones are going to be on colostomies, because not many people know about it. Not many people have some of the issues that I've had, because it didn't just stop there. I still have a few issues, with skin and different things like that I want to talk about, later date anyway. I went through a bout of depression. I didn't want to do physical therapy. I was having leaks constantly in the hospital. But you gotta understand, my cut on my stomach I had been cut 3 different times, and I was left open at this point to heal from the inside out. So my skin was rifted to where the wafer of the actual bag, which actually, this is so crazy. I'm gonna show you that I still have an open scar. This is 6 months post-op, but this part was having a hard time because this was a lot more wide. You can see where it's kind of starting to unfold, but this part wouldn't lay down, so I was constantly having leak after leak after leak. But that's the result of them cutting me, and I think at a later date I'll have a skin graft to kind of, and excuse my pants. Oh my god, that was a poor choice in pants. But anyways, moving on, I went through a lot of support. I got on Facebook. I had a lot of support, and those people telling me about their experiences and things like that. It helped me get through it. They've helped me with supplies. They've been amazing. But, you have to have somebody who understands, and, somebody that's going through it, because it's so tough. And at one point after surgery, I was having leak after leak after leak after leak. I remember, in a puddle of my own poop on the bathroom floor, crying, because I just didn't know what to do anymore. I wanted to die. I wanted it to be over. And everyone around me was just encouraging. And I think another person on YouTube I actually started to watch is the Veganostomy. You need to go check him out, because he literally covers everything. And so I think that's kind of what's inspired me to get this out, because talking is therapy too. It's out there for somebody, to help somebody just as much as I'm counseling my own self, or just getting it out there. And I'll always be available for people to ask me any questions, because like I said, that is so crucial for anyone going through this. I mean, whether you're 15, 23, 24, 22, however old you are, it always helps to have somebody that says, yes, this is what I did. This is how I handle it. I completely understand. People can always say, hey, this is exactly what you need. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to, That's what you need to do. Sorry, I literally lost my train of thought. I haven't slept in a few days, so please forgive me. But yes, I want people to hear my story and see things, you know, that they might be like, hey, wait a minute, I went through that, I understand, or they're about to go through it and have a question, anything like that, you know. That's kind of my Crohn's chronological order journey. In the next couple of videos, I want to discuss, you know, what it's like having an ostomy, because let me tell you, it's definitely not easy, but it gets easier. I want to encourage anyone that's deciding to have the surgery, or it's a must, or if they have the option. You know, once I started finally healing, I literally got to this point where I actually started putting on weight. I was able to live my life, you know, work my job, do things that I hadn't been able to do in such a long time, pain-free. I mean, honestly, it was such a blessing in disguise. It's been tough learning the ropes of it, because it comes with a lot of other stuff. You know, you have to relearn how to do certain things. You always have to have things handy on you, because trust me, I have been in the situation where I've had a bag burst. I remember walking around the casino with my girlfriend at the time, poop all over me. I literally had to wash my poop pants in the bathroom. So, I mean, this does come with a lot of embarrassing moments, but it's normal. And if you can talk about them, you have someone to talk about it with, or you see someone and you can relate to it, I mean, just know that that is just what it is. So I don't know if anyone can identify with the story, but that's, you know, my Crohn's journey, and I know it's far from over. You know, it scares me being only 24 and already at this point in my life, but I'm not going to stop advocating it. I'm not going to stop talking about it. And like I said, you know, my main purpose for starting a YouTube channel, yeah, it was to have fun and do whatever, but if there's anyone out there that sees this and it resonates with them, or they have any questions, or they're going through this, about to go through this, you know, they were just diagnosed, you know, there can never be too much information on the internet, and everybody's story is different. I may have identified with this person's story, but not necessarily identified with this person's story. So I want my story out there, and I hope, you know, anybody can relate to it. If you have any questions, you can obviously leave a comment. Make sure to like the video, and you can follow me on Instagram, emigirl1994. I will link all that in the description below. I also have Facebook, which actually, lame enough, I am more active on Facebook than I am any social media website, just because of Messenger and everything like that. I don't really get on Instagram a lot. I gotta admit, I don't. And Snapchat's a big one of mine. emigirlrolltide. That'll be in the description too. If you have any questions, feel free to add me, message me, do whatever. And I will see you for my next video.